much, everybody, for making time to come in and learn a little bit about some configuration management using a product called Puppet. What we'll do is I will very gracefully flick on to the next screen here. There we go. Okay, so before we kick off, I'll just give you sort of 2 seconds about me. I do apologize for the horrific photograph there. I have been around the automation scene for several years now. I've come from an IT ops management and sysadmin sort of background. I'm not a devy sort of guy, other than doing sort of various bash scripts and batch scripts on Windows stuff. I've not really done an awful lot of programming, so hopefully I'll be able to empower some of you out there that maybe fall into the same category. You've not done a lot of proggy stuff before. A little hint with my knowledge around the automation and configuration management stuff, you probably should be learning to do a bit of the configuration management stuff and learning a bit about programming, because everybody in IT is becoming a software developer, in my humble opinion. The reason I know a bit about this, I run several meetup groups, 7 in fact, one of which is the Sydney Puppet user group. If anybody's listening in from Sydney just now, it'd be good to catch up. You should do a search on Google or go to meetup.com, come down and see us. I've been working with a number of different clients to help deliver continuous delivery solutions, specializing in Puppet. Industry sectors I've worked in, I've done sort of everything from sort of telcos, education, up at the sort of bigger end of town, big insurance companies. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find out some details on there. Just do a search on Stephen Wallace and Puppet. You will find me. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to be talking about config management. Now, before I get stuck into this, there's a couple of different products that Puppet supply, one of which is the completely free of charge Puppet open source, which is an amazing product. It really, really works well. Also for people that prefer to have a slightly shinier version with some commercial support and all the rest of that good stuff, we've got Puppet Enterprise for that. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be showing you a bit of both today, just to try and show you that Puppet can actually be pretty straightforward. Once you've got it set up, it can be a fairly pain-free exercise. So let's skip on and have a little look. If anybody's got any questions, by the way, I don't have any visual on you just now, and I don't have any audio. If I did have any audio, it might be delayed. So if you can put any questions into the chat box, that would be great. Okay, so on the screen just now, we've got just some very basic information to try and reassure you that Puppet's actually been around for a while. So you're not actually gambling. If you do choose to have a look at this as your configuration management solution, the product's been around for about 10 years or something. There's enormous companies use it. Google, Atlassian, they're controlling 50, 100, 200,000 instances using this. It is robust, and it's also scalable. Huge community support around about it as well. So the ability to be able to download and reuse intellectual property from somebody else is really, really good. Okay, so what sort of problems does Puppet look to address? So hypothetically speaking, I'm an IT dude. I want to install some stuff. The business says, "Come along and spin me up a new web server. Thanks very much." So traditionally, and still in many shops today, you would create a VM of some description or a physical box, load up operating system, load up some Linux or some Windows stuff, download some packages, and do it all manually. The obvious disadvantage with that is that it is time-consuming. It is error-prone because a well-known source of errors typically tends to get in the way, and those are humans. Sad to say, but we're not fail-proof. So what do people do to try and get round about this, the human bit, and try and speed it up, make it a bit more reproducible? Well, we've got some options around historically, again, creating some images, maybe some templates, VMware templates, which are great, and you can spin up a number of machines at the same time. However, there's a few issues that they struggle with a little bit historically. How do you get patches onto them? So you've maybe spun up 3 or 4 web servers, and then the next time you want to create a web server is a couple of months later. So you think, that's fine, I've got my template, I'll use that. However, of course, it is way, way behind in patching. And that's obviously not good. We want to try and get consistency, especially when we're talking about the prod environment. Hopefully you're all with me on that one. Okay, so alternative solutions, all or nothing software packages. So this is the big vendors, your HPs, your IBMs, or whatever. So everybody's got an option to cut a check for $1 million, and those guys will be happy to come in and do some stuff for you. Or you can actually write some custom one-off scripts, which tend to work pretty well and are still very popular. Not very robust error checking. Obviously, they're not cross-platform, but they do the job. So this is the sort of stuff that Puppet is trying to make a bit more streamlined, make a bit smarter. So let me just tell you very briefly about why you might want to consider Puppet Open Source versus Puppet Enterprise. Puppet Open Source is built on a development web server called WebBrick, which means that it works absolutely fantastically well. The Puppet console works really, really well until you try and scale your infrastructure to sort of anywhere beyond 80 to 100 devices, in which case you're definitely going to start seeing the limits of that. Now that's not to say that you can't actually build in some scalability options. Because you absolutely can do that, and it's well documented how to do it, but you've got to get your knitting needles out to make that happen. And then when it comes to doing upgrades, there's the usual issues. So Puppet Enterprise, it won't surprise you to know it's got a very shiny front end. We're going to have a look at the console just shortly. It's scalable out of the box if you want to create, N-tier installations, splitting off, the database component called Puppet DB from the actual compilation masters. These are the boxes that the Puppet agent would be connecting into. You can split off, you can split off the lot, and it's out of the box. It will allow you to do that. There's also a whole bunch of other really nice tools built into it. This live management is interesting. It's an orchestration tool that's got Google M Collective under the hood. You ever tried to build that yourself and you've got it working, you're a better person than I am. It's generally not particularly straightforward. Out of the box, it works really well, with Puppet Enterprise. So that's a good reason to think about it, and you get the support and all the rest. Okay, so let's cover some basic sort of Puppet concepts. So we've got a real-life example here. We've got our favorite user called Elmo that we need to install and configure on our entire fleet of Linux boxes, hypothetically. It also works on Windows, by the way, very adequately. So what are the criteria that we need with regards to Elmo? Well, we just need to make sure that Elmo actually exists on all of the boxes, that he's got the correct group ID. Sorry, I'm making an assumption that Elmo is a he here. I do apologize if I have misread Sesame Street all these years to date. Never mind, moving on. We've got to make sure that the group ID is correct, and we've also got to make sure that Elmo has got a home directory for when they log on. So we could do that in a number of different ways. With traditional Linux, Unixy style tools, we've got a whole bunch there. I just try and embiggen it. There we go. Okay, maybe that makes it a bit more readable. So we could use standard tools, user add, user mod, group add, make directory, etc., etc. And we could write some scripts to be able to do it. And that's the way it's been done forever, However, if you've got, you're a Linux dude, you've just gone to join a company, and you've now been introduced to a situation where you're used to Red Hat style family Linux, and you're now in a Debian shop, for example, and they've also got a few AIX boxes, and just for fun, they've got a few HPUX boxes kicking around in the back. And yes, it's your job to make sure that this user goes onto all of those as well. So what commands are you going to use in your script for that? Life just got an awful lot more complex. And what are the switches? User add or add user minus, I don't know. Anyway, so what Puppet will allow you to do is very simply, all you need to know is what you want to do. You don't need to know how to do it. That is the function of Puppet itself. That's the function of configuration management. It will abstract you from that layer of complexity. So you could do something like this. And I know that all of the Unixy, Linuxy boys and girls out there in the audience are staring at that going, yeah, I can do that. That's easy. I understand that. However, back on planet Earth, to your average mere mortal, that looks like an awful lot of alphabet soup. Quite difficult to maintain. Clearly, if you get a newbie coming on in and reads that, they're going to go, WTF. What on earth is it? So yes, you could do that. Or you could maybe use Puppet or one of the other configuration management tools, and from a Puppet perspective, this is what the syntax would look like. You've got 4 lines of code with a wrapper on it. And when Puppet runs against this, in fact, I'm fairly certain that if you were to show that code block to your granny, I'm quite sure that she may be able to figure out what it's actually doing. So it's native English readable, which, by contrast, need I say any more? Let's move on. Just before I really offend some of the Linuxy, Unixy diehards here with the big, bushy grey beards. Okay, so we've got our first little example of what Puppet code actually looks like there. So it's very straightforward. It's just a case of, we have what's known as a resource type here, which is a user. We want to manage a user. What's the user called? The user's called Elmo. That's called the title in Puppet speak. And then we've got what's known as attributes. So each resource type, in this case a user, I've got different attributes that we can use to manage that particular resource. So in this case, we're going to ensure the user is present. We're going to fiddle around with the group ID, and we're going to make sure that all the home directory works just fine. So as I sort of hinted at, Puppet is it's a state management tool. So we define in programmatic terms what you want your end state to look like, and it's Puppet's job to enforce that. So we can see over the right-hand side here, we've got the desired state that we have described in some Puppet code. And what we do is we run Puppet against that desired code, and I'll show you a little example coming up in 2 secs. And what Puppet will do is Puppet will read what the desired state what the desired state should be versus what the current state actually is. And if there's any drift involved, it'll go through a process of convergence to take the current state and transition it into the desired state. So we can see over here the group ID should be sysadmin, and the home directory is mount home Elmo. Now we know that this is not correct. Yeah, we've seen that this has been changed. Yeah, so there's been a sysadmin person has come on board or whatever, very trigger happy, logged on to production. I know that this has never happened with anybody out there in the audience. You've all got very, very secure environments. So the sysadmin gung-ho comes on and fixes a problem in production. So he's now fixed the problem on that web server by updating the group ID to be staff and the home directory to be home Elmo. Well, that's not how we need the box to actually be. So Puppet wakes up by default every 30 minutes, and if you want it to, it will fix it for you. It will put it back and change it to the correct state. So the group ID gets reset, the home directory gets reset, and then we go back to the desired state, which is where we want to be. Every 30 minutes it's going to wake up. If nothing needs to be done because the desired state matches the current state, it'll do nothing. Other than report back to the Puppet console to say, I checked this stuff and all was good. So when Puppet actually makes some changes, it logs it. If it doesn't make changes, it also logs it as well. So you've got a full audit trail. So really we're talking about the paradigm shift, which is infrastructure as code. So here we've got a little example. It's also being paraphrased as executable documentation. I'm sure that if we've got some people out there who have done some provisioning, they have built up some software and got the box to a state where it's useful, then somebody says, have you got any monitoring configured yet? And it's a case of, well, I'll try and get to it when I can. Any thorough and comprehensive documentation? Well, you've got the as-built document, which, as we all know, is outdated after approximately 3.7 seconds after it goes into prod. So not fantastic. By contrast, your Puppet code, as long as the Puppet agent is running on those boxes, then your Puppet code is the exact configuration of the boxes, or your entire fleet running in each of your environments. So it can be very, very powerful. So we can see that clearly it's very descriptive. It's English readable stuff. So here we've got our first little exposure. We've got a couple of resource types here that we're managing. We've got a resource type, which is a user, and a new type, which is called a group. So what we're doing is we're managing the user resource first of all, but the user resource needs to be part of the sysadmin group, which of course doesn't exist by default. So we've also included the resource declaration to manage the group resource as well. And Puppet's smart enough, it knows that if it's going to be creating a user that requires a group that doesn't exist, and it's going to be managing the group, it's going to create and manage the group first before managing the user resource. It's got half a brain with that stuff, which is good. So the basic building blocks for Puppet, if you imagine back in sort of sysadmin land, we've got, what do you guys and gals do? We install packages, first of all. We download a package, we install the package, we play with the configuration file probably, and then we start the services and we test it, and we make sure that the services are persistent over reboot using the check config stuff or whatever. So that's exactly what we do with Puppet as well, and this is where you'll probably be spending most of your time. You'll be putting together resource declarations to manage packages and their configuration files and the services, and you'll be describing some relationship ordering stuff between them, to make sure that clearly if you're going to be updating a configuration file, it's probably best if you've got the package installed first of all. I like to pass down these really hard tips. Okay, so let's move on. So here we can see that, well, I touched upon this briefly earlier on. We've got a couple of resource declarations that are managed in terms of attributes. So I said for different resource types. So we've got resource type of user. Up here we've got a resource type of package. Each of them can be managed using different sets of attributes. So attributes for a user, as you might imagine, we've got the name of the user, whether the user is present or absent. We've got group stuff. We've got password stuff. Yes, we can synchronize passwords, SSH keys, and likewise, when somebody leaves the company under a dark cloud, yes, we can delete those keys and remove, control those users on all the boxes instantaneously, if that's required. So we've got different attributes for different, resource types. Clearly, the attributes for managing a package are not going to be the same as those for managing a user. So configuration management, you've got this this concept of a resource abstraction layer, because if I am, I'm specifying a resource, which is it's a package. I want to install the OpenSSH server. I want to ensure that it's present. Now, what commands do I need to use under the hood for that? Well, the good news is that, who gives a flying so-and-so? I don't need to know that, because that's Puppet's job to figure it out. So if Puppet is running on a Red Hat family box, by that I'm meaning RHEL, Fedora, CentOS, that sort of stuff, then it knows that it will use yum by default. Although if you've got some curly-whirly reason that you need to install stuff using RPM-I, for example, then you can also specify what's known as the provider for installing that package. So you've got full flexibility. And likewise, Puppet knows from a Debian perspective, if you're logging on to like Ubuntu or Mint, I'm sure it's Mint, then it knows that it needs to use, the apt-get magic under the hood. Okay, the Puppet console. So this is the Puppet Enterprise console thingy. So it provides a very sort of clear overview of the health and well-being of your configuration drift in your fleet. So if you've got large fleets, this is a damn handy little thing to to know about. From a visual perspective, green is obviously good. Blue means that things have actually been managed by Puppet, and it has made some changes successfully. Red stuff, as you would imagine, red is not particularly particularly desirable. That means that Puppet has tried to manage a resource and has failed. So this could mean that you've got some bad syntax out there. You've maybe not set up adequate software testing to make sure that the quality of your code is good, or you may have just misspelt a package name that's trying to download Apache with 3 E's on the end, and it's failed. Or Apache 3 instead of Apache 2. Anyway, moving on. So a simple sort of overview of your infrastructure. So this is, we've got a little classification tab here. So classification is all about the concept of taking a Puppet class, which is a bunch of resource declarations. So a class might be my web shop ABC. And the resources within that class are, install Apache, chuck in a configuration file, and make sure that the service is started. So we've created a class down on the file system, and now we're actually going to apply that class to a node, or 2 nodes, or your entire fleet of 1,000 boxes running up in Amazon. So for those of you that are security conscious and risk averse, with great power comes great responsibility with this stuff. You need to be careful. And there's a whole bunch of programmatic smarts that you can put in place to reduce the risks that are associated with this. So you would, you're in full control of what would actually roll out into your prod environment. So here we can see that there is a class called userprefs that we are applying onto into a group of nodes that's called training. So we're going to see a little example of this right at the end of this slide deck. So I'm going to come back to it. So modules and classes. This is just sort of building on what I said in the previous slide. So Puppet's got the concept of resources and the resource types that you'll typically be using. We've got packages, files, and services. But those aren't any good for actually controlling or managing any resources until, and just before I come to that until, leave you on the edge of your seat, here's an example of some resource declaration. So we've got a package, we've got a service, and we've got a file in there. We've also got the element of ordering in here as well. So this file, before Puppet manages the file, the sshd config file, it requires that the package called OpenSSH is actually managed first. So this file would not be managed until the package is actually installed. And from a service perspective, service requires the configuration file. So when the configuration file actually, it needs to be there, but if it changes, then Puppet will automatically know this, and it will restart the service for you. So it's pretty handy that way, easy to roll out, updates to the fleet. Okay, so we mentioned that classes are just wrappers around collections of resource declarations. So we're getting to a stage where you can actually, whilst you can't actually use classes directly, you can actually include them and use them in anger. So they will actually manage resources. So here's an example of a Puppet class which just builds on the resource declarations that we saw in the previous couple of slides. And all we've done is we've added a class wrapper to the top and bottom. So we've got class SSH, open curlies, and we've got a closed curlies at the bottom. So if we now include, in programmatic terms, this SSH class, then all of these resources will be managed. The way that we do this is we put all of these classes into things called manifests. So we've got resources, which get wrapped into classes, which get wrapped into manifests on top there. And we can see, here's a little example of a manifest path. So all of my manifests live under a particular directory, my module directory, and we'll just come to that. Manifest, and we've got init.pp. Init.pp, any file with a .pp extension can be used by Puppet. If the file is called init.pp, that is the entry point, and Puppet will automatically try and double quote run that manifest. Okay, so we talked about manifest with pp extensions already. So let's skip on. Modules. Okay, so modules are the top level sort of wrapper for all of the manifests. So we might have a module which is webshop ABC again, to use that example. And under the module which is called webshop ABC, we've got a bunch of sub manifests which all need to be with classes inside that need to be included. And when they all get included in the correct order, they'll aggregate up into something that will actually be functional and will work for you. So this is the highest level module, sorry, the highest level wrapper, or container, which is called a module. There's tons of modules that you can actually you can reuse other people's IP by going to forge.puppetlabs.com, and you'll see there's about 1 billion or so, I mean, give or take, obviously, there's about 1 billion modules that you can actually download either manually or programmatically. And I'll give you another little example of that at the end of this slide deck. So we're moving into the last 4.5 hours of my presentation. No, I'm only kidding, just seeing if somebody was awake at that end. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so we've got this concept of the no-op operator. And this is really handy and will save your life. You must get to know it, and you must use it all the time. Once you've written some Puppet code, and you're trying to actually test that Puppet code, we use what's known as Puppet apply. And if we put this -- no-op switch in there, what that will do is it will tell you what it would have done without actually changing anything. So it's not 100% foolproof, but for the vast majority of times, it'll give you a damn good idea on. It'll tell you what it would have managed, and as long as that sort of syncs up with what you think you're managing, then that's probably all good. So in this example on the screen, we can see that the etc. sudoers file. The current permissions on that file are 646, and they should be 440. So it's not actually managed anything. Then we remove the no-op switch, and we see that Puppet then goes ahead and it actually changes the permissions from 646 to 440, which is cool. So what other little bits do we get with Puppet Enterprise? That you can compile them up yourself and you can hand sew them. So I'm not being Puppet Enterprise biased here. I'm just telling you about a couple of bits. So Factor comes with both the open source version of Puppet and also Puppet Enterprise, and it's sort of a cross-platform inventory system. So as the little example down here shows you, if you're to type in Factor and hit return from command line, it will run a bunch of little scripts under the hood and return a whole bunch of key pair information for that particular node. So there's about 30, 40, 50 of them or something that come back by default. No, excuse me. Every time Puppet runs, it actually runs Factor at the beginning of the run and will send all of this key pair info back to the Puppet master. So in the absence of a fully fledged CMDB, you've actually got something that could resemble a CMDB, courtesy of what's known as Puppet DB, because Puppet DB, that comes along with all this stuff, stores all of Factor's output for a given node. You can also create your own custom facts, should that be what you want. So this is how Puppet can make logical decisions around what's actually going to be managed. Because you can say, if, to use a trivial example, if my fact, which is what Factor returns, my facts, if my fact called architecture is equal to x86-64, then my web installation package is the 64-bit of the RPN, something along those lines. So PuppetDB, I talked a little bit about this. It's an API-fronted database service that comes along with Puppet. You can run reports off it. You can do inventory searches through it. It can be interrogated externally from Puppet as well. It's not bring your own database. They've got Postgres running under the hood there. It does not run on MySQL. It's not going to run on MySQL. There's a whole bunch of other backends that you can do, and I've heard a whisper Oracle may be on the way. So you can bring your own and plug it in there. Hyra. Okay, so this is a little function which will allow you to externalize your data from your actual code. So little example. In fact, let me just double check. Yeah, okay. So maybe just an example is better than me trying to ramble my way through describing what it actually is. Without Hyra, if my fact, my fully qualified domain name is equal to this, then I know where my NTP server's address should be such and such, so I'm going to set it manually. And if my environment's equal to development, then set this variable to be equal to that, otherwise set it to something else. So we've all been there with these, well, maybe not everybody down at that end, but I've read about situations where people have hard-coded IP addresses into scripts. You've never done it, have you? Shake your head. Okay, good. I was just checking. So you've read about it as well. So this way, this is horrible, by which we've got lots of IP addresses in there, which is nasty. So wouldn't it be nicer if we can externalize all of that data and let Puppet do a dynamic lookup to find out what the correct data is for any variable. So we see a little example here. We've got NTP server. It's doing a Hyra lookup for a variable called NTP server. And there's a whole bunch of intelligence you can put in it, and it will traverse a hierarchy to work out what the correct and most appropriate data would be for your given data center, state, country, region. It's very, very, very handy. So I talked about this already. Orchestration. There's a bit of what Puppet Enterprise calls live admin, which has got MCollective under the hood. Another great tool by Google. Hypothetical situation, I want to get a patch out to all of my 500, Linux boxes, Windows boxes, whatever, Linux boxes, let's say. So what you can do is you can use live admin to roll these tested patches out to your entire fleet, and do it like it in batches. So we can do like a batch of 10 with a with a 5-minute break, and then do the next 10, and then have a 5-minute break, and then do the next 10. So at least if you are going to destruct the box by installing this badly tested update, you're only going to do it in small batches, and also you're not going to explode your Puppet Master because you can actually stage the rollout of these patches. You can install packages on demand. You can check for differences in specific resource types, like the user password might be different on 5% of all of your boxes. You want to get them all the same, then you want to be able to know about this stuff. Well, Live Admin is a great tool for that. And I mentioned forge.puppetlabs.com. I'm going to show you a way by which you can do that programmatically. This is a place that you can go. There's now, I forget the exact number. It wouldn't surprise me if there's nearly 3,500 or 4,000 modules that you have freely available to download. So it's really handy. There's also an IDE that you can plug into Eclipse called Geppetto, which for the noob can simplify your life immensely. It does syntax checking, syntax highlighting, style checking. It'll integrate into your source control system that you are all using, aren't you? All source controlled? Excellent. Just checking again. Okay, so let's move on. Okay, keep calm, it's demo time. So what I've done here, other than do a quick pray to the demo gods, paying homage before I came in here, what I've done is I've just used the Puppet Learning VM, which is a VM that you can freely download from puppetlabs.com at a link that is not dissimilar to this one at the bottom of the screen. Okay, so download it. It'll take away a lot of the stress, and it's got a PDF that will help you walk through getting going on this stuff. Okay, so I have downloaded that already, and here's another flawless transition as I move on over. Okay, so what I've done is I've just gone into something. Let me see. My screen's gone wobbly. That's okay. Bit of that. Where's VirtualBox? There we go. Okay, so all I've done is I've just downloaded. I'm using VirtualBox, so I think I may have just killed my screen if I was sharing the wrong screen. That's okay. I'm going to whip back into my browser, so hopefully everybody can see again. I think I just deprived you for about 10 seconds. I was going to show you VirtualBox, and I just did import appliance to pull in the learning VM. The only other trick is, you just got to read the PDF, and you've got to just change the networking to bridge from Wi-Fi or wherever your other DHCP source is going to be. So what I might do is just whip along a screen here, and just to show you my IP address, if I've got it correct, is not running. Stuck. We may not be caring and sharing here. Let me just see if I can fix that. Next one. No. Sorry about this. Just be 1 second. Nope.
Yep, so you need to go into the green arrow.
Yep.
Change that one.
I'm just gonna. Okay. Management and there. Present to everyone. Hey, so if I whip over onto there. Hopefully that should reconnect. Probably it's going to catch up. Probably. Okay, so I'm just going to carry on. I hope everybody can still see me. So I'm just logging on to the Puppet console. And I'm not seeing any confirmation that I am actually caring and sharing here. I think it's catching up. Okay. So I'm assuming that we are all on. I've logged on to the Puppet console, and we can see down here that I've only got one node that is registered, and it's my node here. It's called learning.puppetlabs.vm. That's the fully qualified domain name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into classification. In the fullness of time. Mental note, I probably should add a few more resources to this thing before I came in. My screen appears to have hung. Oh, there we go. Good, the demo gods are still talking to me. That's fantastic. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new node group, which is called my web servers. And I'm going to add that group. I did click add. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to go into the My Web Servers group, and I'm going to add my node to it. Okay, so I can either just add my node in here. It does an AJAX lookup, and I can select learning.puppetlabs.vm. Also, up here, I can also do, I can select to classify according to facts. So I've got a fact called OS family. And if I was to type in Red Hat, that should go away and do a bit of a search. This might be case sensitive for that one. There we go. There we go. So it's changed to one. So it's found one node. So I can add a rule there, and for all Red Hat family boxes, it's going to classify them. For me. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to select the individual node, which is called learning.puppetlabs.vm, and I'm going to pin that node into the group. And I'll commit the change. Wait for 2 seconds. There we go. Now I'm going to go into classes, and the class that I've created is called LVM Guide. So I'm going to select LVM Guide. I'm going to go Add Class. So this could be a class that I'm going to apply to all of my Red Hat family boxes, all CentOS, all Fedora, all RHEL boxes. Not suggesting that's probably what you want to do. However, okay, so now for this group, which is called My Web Servers, which has got my node in it, it's now classified with LVM Guide. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to, I was going to drop to a terminal window, but I think I'm going to go into Live Management and use Live Management, which is the M collective thing I was talking about. And I'm going to go into Control Puppet, and I'm going to try and do a remote agent run. So if I do run once, and there we go. So it's now run the Puppet agent on all of my nodes, which is one node, incidentally. So what that's doing, and I'll show you the code just in 2 secs, is it is applying that class, which is going to fail because I've not installed the Apache module, which I'll do right now. I go to, there we go, just be 1 second. So there we go, just got to log on to this box. That's my IP address. I'm just logging on to the box just now. I'm going to install I'm going to run Puppet module install Puppet labs dash Apache, and I'm going to hit return. See if I can share that out. That's the sort of guy I am. Not from there. Let's see if I can share it out. There we go. Right, we'll try sharing out that screen. Present to everybody. Hey, there we go. Okay, so you can see the command that I've run because I need to get the module that Puppet Labs have written to be able to control Apache. So to install programmatically from command line, I can just do Puppet module install, Puppet Labs-Apache. I can do Puppet module search, whatever the heck I want. So what it's doing just now is it's programmatically connecting onto Puppet Labs API, and it is pulling down not only the Puppet Labs Apache module, but all of its prereqs as well. So there we go, it's done. So it's pulled down another couple of modules, and if I do, there we go, okay. So if I do Puppet agent space -t, what this is going to do, this is me forcing the agent to run. So you remember we've got the LVM guide that we have classified this node with. This is going to connect onto the Puppet master. It's going to find out that it needs to be classified with the LVM guide module, and it's going to install and configure Apache and a bunch of other stuff if the wind is blowing from the right direction. I didn't check the weather forecast today to see if the wind was going to be blowing from the right direction, so we'll keep our fingers crossed. Come on, go you good thing. Come on. I hope you're all willing it to go as well here. There we go. Some of you joined in there. You started to will it to happen. We need some East Coast, West Coast love happening. Oh, there we go. I felt it coming in. Well done. So Puppet's running. Geez, the things that I say when I'm under massive stress here trying to make this stupid stuff work. Okay, so it's doing a whole bunch of stuff. It's downloading a whole bunch of little Ruby bits, which I've never had to look at in my entire life, which I'm quite happy about. Synchronizing a whole bunch of stuff. Then it's going to go ahead and it's going to figure out what platform it's running on. It is going to have a look at its catalog. It's going to find out it needs Apache and some configuration files and some stuff like that. And there's going to be some utter magic happening any second. Come on, come on. And this is pretty much, once this is worked fantastically well, I think I'll probably wrap it up there, and we'll see if anybody's got any questions. Come on, need some West Coast love. Come on, shout it out. Go, go, you good thing. Come on. I have faith. I have faith. Come on. Just wish I knew the words to a song I could sing you in the meantime. Come on. It's taking a long time. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Oh, love hanging at the last moment here. Come on. This is where you're supposed to look fantastic and make the product look good. Come on. The demo god's frowning on me. Can't believe it. Sure. Once this thing successfully works, come on. Oh. Could not retrieve catalog. Timing out. Fantastic. Okay, so it's looking like the demo gods might actually hate me at this point. Let's try once more. If it doesn't happen in 30 or 45 seconds, then I shall bow out gracefully. But it worked on my machine earlier. Heard that before. Maybe whilst that's running, I'm not sure if we've got any questions at all. And if there are, I'd love to be able to see or hear them. Okay, no time for questions. Oh, there we go. Hang on a second. Yeah, it's sad, but it's true about the questions. Loading facts is looking as if it is actually going to work. So it's actually installing the package just now. It's pulling down Apache, which if we've got a decent web link shouldn't take too long at all. Just takes 30 seconds. Yeah. Maybe the web link is a little bit slow, for which I do apologize, but that is actually working. Anyway, so I think that probably pretty much wraps it up for me. So thank you very much for watching.